The CSPC Trailblazer Award recognizes individuals who have demonstrated novelty, creativity, and impact through leadership, vision, courage, and commitment to the overall advancement of science and innovation policy ecosystem.
Joignez-vous à nous pour passer en revue nos précédents lauréats des prix du pionnier.
Thank you. Merci. C'est avec grande humilité que j'accepte cette reconnaissance. À la fois un honneur et un privilège pour moi d'être reconnu par la communauté des politiques scientifiques canadiennes.
I remain convinced that advancement in science and policy innovation are cornerstone to closing the health equity gap along racial lines.
Merci beaucoup. C'est un grand honneur pour moi d'être reconnu ainsi par le CSPC, une association canadienne incontournable.
To present these awards, we wish to invite Dr. Martine Lagacé from the University of Ottawa and member of the Trailblazer Awards Selection Committee to announce the awards. Professeur Lagacé est titulaire d'un doctorat et d'un baccalauréat en psychologie, baccalauréat en communication ainsi qu'un certificat de premier cycle en gérontologie. Elle est actuellement professeure adjointe au département de communication et vice-rectrice associée, promotion et développement de la recherche à l'Université d'Ottawa.
Alors, bonsoir à vous tous. Je tenterai d'être brève. Je sais qu'on est peut-être un petit peu fatigué à cette heure de la soirée. Je vais d'abord commencer en disant que je suis extrêmement heureuse et honorée d'être ici ce soir avec vous, de célébrer le travail des lauréats qui recevront donc ces 3 prix ce soir. Je voudrais aussi souligner combien nous sommes fiers à l'Université d'Ottawa de faire équipe depuis déjà plusieurs années avec la conférence sur les politiques scientifiques canadiennes. Je pense que c'est un lieu qui démontre combien, quand les chercheurs font équipe avec les décideurs, on s'oriente vers de meilleures sociétés et nous sommes tous gagnants et gagnantes. Alors, c'est un plaisir renouvelé que de travailler avec Merdad et toute son équipe depuis plusieurs années. I was indeed a member of the Trailblazer Selection Committee and was assisted in this effort by the following members of the committee. Rima Al-Awar, Head Therapeutic Innovation and Drug Discovery of the Institute for Cancer Research, Steve DeRoy, Founding Director and Co-Owner of the Firelight Group, Kevin Fitzgibbon, former Executive Director of Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, Peter Phillips, Distinguished Professor, University of Saskatchewan, Nadine Spencer, CEO of Brand EQ Group, Nipun Vats, Assistant Deputy Minister, Science and Research at Innovation Science and Economic Development Canada. Nous avons reçu d'excellentes soumissions cette année et les décisions ont été difficiles parce que les candidatures étaient toutes excellentes. So in the following minutes, I'll be presenting 3 Trailblazer Awards. The first is for Innovation Policy. The second is Science for Policy. And the third is Policy for Science. The Innovation Policy Award recognizes an individual who has distinguished themselves for putting the outputs of research, knowledge, or technology into use for broad socio-economic benefits while improving productivity and competitiveness and driving economic growth and job creation. This year, the committee selected Dr. Alicia Main, Associate Vice President Dr. Main is Associate Vice President, Knowledge Mobilization and Innovation at Simon Fraser University for her work on the I-21 program, which was tailor-made to mobilize university research, teach science and technology commercialization, and develop an entrepreneurial mindset in graduate scientists and engineering. Félicitations, Dr. Main.
Thank you very much. You know, they say it takes a village, and I'd say it takes a science innovation ecosystem. So thank you for being here. Thank you to Merdad for all that you have done swimming upstream for so many years, being passionate about this cause, and to all the volunteers that are here tonight, helping us celebrate science and help to make science make greater impact through innovation policy. Some of you were here for the panel this morning where I spoke about some of my belief in the early stage interventions we can make, both nationally and internationally, by investing in people, by helping look at the incentives from our HQP, our graduate researchers, our postdocs, our PIs, and thinking about how, if we were in their shoes, we would try to make it easier to make impact from their research. And I think there's some easy innovation policy pieces that we could create if we had the will to do it. The courage to do it, which is what this award is about. Some of that is training and taking advantage of the underutilized resource we have and the unique conditions that we have in Canada. Some of that is realizing that a one-size-fits-all solution won't work for breakthrough research, and having the courage to maybe have strategic buckets and think a little bit differently about breakthrough science innovation. We heard from Nipun Vats this morning about how we punch above our weight in that area. Let's think about how to extrapolate that impact. And, you know, the remarks that you made earlier, Greg, about I'm from your era, very close in age and in the type of values that were instilled with me early. And innovation policy comes honestly to me around the kitchen table. My father was in the government of Pierre Elliott Trudeau. He was an MP. He was Parliamentary Secretary for Science. He was on the Science Innovation Council of Canada for about 10 years, and he was a scientist entrepreneur. So it's no doubt that, that those lessons and those examples came to me early. And I'm very proud tonight to be here amongst this community of people trying to strengthen our science innovation ecosystem. And I'm very proud to be continuing my father's legacy. Thank you.
Félicitations, Dr. May. The second award, the Science for Policy Award, recognizes an individual who has distinguished themselves via the application and use of scientific research and knowledge to inform evidence-based decisions for public policy and regulations. The committee selected Dr. Gregory Smallwood, Principal Research Officer at the National Research Council of Canada, for his work on international climate change-related policy, which comes at a critical time in efforts to achieve global policy agreements to reduce overall greenhouse gas emissions. His science to policy advocacy has had a dramatically positive impact on reducing global transportation-related black carbon and other practical matters that are key drivers of climate change and adverse health effects. In particular, his sustained and creative policy advocacy has resulted in one of the most significant changes to global aircraft engine emission standards since the 1980s. Congratulations to Dr. Smallwood. He cannot be here with us tonight, but we have a recording where he will be accepting his award.
Good evening, distinguished audience, in particular members of the Canadian Science Policy Centre. I am deeply honored and humbled to have been selected as the first recipient of the CSPC Trailblazer Award in Science Policy in the new Science for Policy category. The CSPC represents the pinnacle of science and innovation policy in Canada and is recognized globally. This important award is the highest distinction I have earned in a long and productive career. There are many people working on science for policy who should be recognized, and I am hopeful the light will shine on them in future years. I thank the CSPC for considering my work worthy of this award. I've been fortunate to be able to take a holistic approach to my research, taking it from lab bench innovation to international regulation. The principal success was in the development of a technique to measure black carbon, a nanoparticle aerosol emitted by hydrocarbon combustion. It is a strong agent for climate change, affects local air quality, and is implicated in adverse health effects. Actions to reduce black carbon have synergistic benefits in all three areas: climate, environment, and human health. In the Metrology Research Center, I learned the characteristics of the complete metrologist, which means going beyond thinking as a scientific expert to having a client focus, being a diplomat with international awareness, being professional, and most of all, being helpful to ensure that we explain our work so that those around us understand it. These are also essential tenets for bridging the science policy interface. In order to take this laboratory innovation forward all the way to regulation, I was fortunate to be surrounded by a strong team at the National Research Council and to be supported by so many external collaborators, scientists, engineers, policymakers, regulators, from academia, industry, and government. There are far too many to name, but there are some specific people that I must mention who shared the path with me throughout the years. First and foremost are my wife and family, who never once complained about the lengthy days in the lab, endless travel to field measurement campaigns, and to meetings to persuade the international community to complete this aircraft emissions certification requirement, the first new one in over 4 decades. For their unwavering support to research excellence, I am so appreciative of the leadership at the NRC, which has continued to invest in its scientists and create the greatest opportunity possible for researchers to succeed, not only in terms of technical development, but also in innovation for the public good. It is in this latter space that science for policy can thrive. I was fortunate to have had 2 early career mentors at the National Research Council, whose guidance in those formative years was essential: Dr. Dave Snelling and Dr. Omer Goulder. I cannot express how much having their input meant to me. While I've had many external collaborators and supporters, I must mention Wendy Bailey at Transport Canada. She was the one who connected my scientific research to the regulatory community, opening the door for me as a technical delegate to the International Civil Aviation Organization, a United Nations specialized agency where emissions certification requirements for aircraft are produced. All through this adventure, I was able to engage with Canadian and international policymakers who taught me so much about the considerations that go into drafting effective and accepted policy. It is not enough to have a technically sufficient or even superior approach. There are so many other factors that must be considered. The regulatory requirement must be written with precision yet be concise and understandable. Translating scientific jargon to understandable policy requires cooperation and effective communication from both sides. This is a lesson I have learned and carry with me every day. I have one message for my scientific colleagues. In order for your research to have impact, you must make all the effort you can to reach beyond your everyday science community to communicate it to the broader communities, including policy, in terms that all can understand. Once again, thank you for recognizing my contributions to a broad international effort and for bestowing the Trailblazer Award in Science Policy, Science for Policy, on me.
So our final Trailblazer Award is the Policy for Science Award. Ce que je vous disais, c'est que c'est un nouveau prix cette année qui est remis. Ce prix politique pour la science récompense le travail d'une personne dont le travail, justement, est pionnier en termes de politique et de pratiques qui contribuent au développement de nouvelles technologies, au renforcement des capacités et aussi aux infrastructures de recherche. This year, the committee selected Dr. Imogen Ko, professor, Toronto Metropolitan University, I'm going to finish reading because it's important that we all understand why you were chosen. Professor Imogen Ko, she's, as I mentioned, professor at the Metropolitan University for her work on integrating the principles of equity, diversity, and inclusion into the research ecosystem of STEM, including into the policies and practices of funding agencies in government and into the workplaces of commerce and industry where scientific knowledge may be generated or applied. Long before EDI became street talk within government and academia, she recognized a problem endemic to science. She has had significant influence on where, when, and how EDI has been and is being integrated into policy developed by government, funding agencies, scholarly societies, post-secondary education, healthcare entities, and commercial and non-for-profit enterprises. Imogen Ko has inspired a generation with her championship work on EDI. Bravo.
Thank you so much. Okay, you said 15 minutes, right, Medad? It's very dangerous to give me a podium and a microphone. I want to thank CSPC so much for this award. I have a very conflicted relationship with awards because we know they're one of the skewed metrics that we use to evaluate merit. And if you don't know about the Matthew effect, please go look it up. I can't avoid a teachable moment as a professor. So go look up the Matthew effect. We give awards to people who get awards. But this award is very meaningful to me because it really recognizes the invisible and usually uncredited work that I and others have done in parallel with having a career as an academic research scientist. So there are a number of us who have done that, the conventional things you're supposed to do, get grants, mentor graduate students, publish papers. But at the same time, I've had parallel careers of activism and advocacy and engagement with various bodies to help develop and shift policy because we recognized that this was a really important contribution to the community. There never used to be a space for that kind of section to tell what you had been doing on an NSERC Discovery Grant application or some other application, but there is now because it's an important contribution and it's a highly impactful activity that scientists can engage with. And I've had the privilege, I've had the privilege to, and continue to very much enjoy working with various sectors on embedding EDI principles into research processes. I want to acknowledge that this work builds on the creative work of scholars that have been here for millennia, and that we must engage and embrace those learnings, and I commit to continued learning in my own journey as a scholar. After hearing about this award, I went back through old emails, Medad, because we've known each other quite a long time, and I wanted to find my first sort of recollections of CSPC, and I think it was about 2015, and there was a meeting in Toronto, and I was on a panel, I led a panel, and there was some discussion from some young people about frustrations with the conference, and I looked around, and I have to say the makeup of that conference was, shall we say, flawed. So I came and talked to you about the demographics, and you did what I can only describe as the exact kind of behavior that I would so love to see in leaders everywhere. You did not become defensive. We engaged in a dialogue. We talked about how to improve and how to increase the diversity of the conference over the years, and we did it. We had the first EDI panel in 2016. It was very nerve-wracking. I think I'm the first person to say EDI at a CSPC event. It was outside the regular scheduling of the conference, and we didn't know if anybody was going to show up, but the room was full. People wanted to learn more, and we've had panels since then, and they've always been full. And now I listen to people at these events. I listen to the presidents of the funding councils, I listen to leaders, and it's almost as if EDI has always been here, and we're all talking about it so comfortably. We have work to do. I want to thank the participants of those early panels for putting their trust in me. Some of them are here. Dr. Shahini Ghosh, you were one of my first. Yeah. Thank you for trusting me. Indigenous scholars, Maleni Goodchild and Deanna Burgett, I've learned so much. Dr. Mahadeo Sukai taught me everything about creating cultures of accessibility for people with disabilities. By the way, closed captioning, ramps, and ASL. So we've got some work to do, okay? I was very worried about Kirsty Duncan climbing up those steps this morning. I also want to thank Anna Sophia Barrows, my partner in crime, who couldn't be here, but without whom none of those panels would ever have happened. I want to thank Toronto Metropolitan University and Stephen, you and your team, for putting this nomination together. This is an institution that changed its name. Remember that universities are medieval, Eurocentric constructs, colonial constructs. They were built by old rich white men for young rich white men. They are designed on exclusionary principles. Exclusion is a feature, not a bug. And yet we have modeled our institutions on this very medieval Eurocentric structure. And we're continually trying to retrofit them. If I had my way, I would burn them down and we'd start again. I have a ton of privilege, I have tenure, I can say these things. We hold these institutions up as if they're the best that we can do, but they're not. We can do better. We really can do better, and we must do better. If you're going to push the agenda on social justice as an academic scientist, you have to have courage, and some of my colleagues have talked about courage. You also have to have humility. And certainly I have privilege, which means I also have responsibility. We have to understand as scientists what it means to be complicit in systems of oppression. And being silent means being complicit. We cannot be silent. If you claim to support individually or institutionally, as I've heard frequently, you can claim to be in support, for instance, for gender equity or work-life balance, and you want to remove barriers to access for historically excluded groups, then you must challenge and dismantle systems of oppression that seek to control reproductive rights. You may not have heard of an academic scientist say this in a public setting, but I'm going to say it now. Abortion is healthcare, and we need to protect the rights of people to define their own reproductive destinies. If you want full engagement of all the talent, you need to be sure that all the talent can be fully engaged on their own terms. We must pay attention, much closer attention to the concerns, fears, but also the incredible contributions of queer and trans scientists, of disabled scientists. I want to remind you that tomorrow is LGBTQ2S+ in STEM Day. Again, all of those organizations and individuals who said they were committed to EDI, I want to know what you're doing to celebrate that day, make members of that community in your organizations feel welcomed, included, and valued. Data and evidence, the science, the research science, and a shout out to our social science colleagues who do much of this work. Data and evidence say that those people still feel discriminated against, harassed, unsafe. Diverse representation is not synonymous with EDI expertise. So don't expect those from historically excluded demographics to carry the workload for EDI initiatives. And let's push the conversation. We need to talk about toxic masculinity in the tech sector. If we're going to promote AI and machine learning, let's talk about the culture. We need to talk about white fragility in academia and use these words. We need to talk about racism and sexual harassment in the sciences, whether they be field sciences or laboratory sciences. These are the kinds of things that I hear a lot from trainees, particularly across the country. We can do better. We can have these difficult conversations. We really can. We've come so far. But I really want to push us into these more challenging conversations using this language, and so that we can build better, richer, more creative science cultures. A senior male professor once commented how I was always banging on about women in science. And he also told a colleague of mine to get off her soapbox, her metaphorical soapbox. And it was really annoying, but the best revenge is living well, or certainly living loud. And so I launched the program Soapbox Science in Canada, and we build real three-dimensional soapboxes. It's rolled out across Canada now. It's one of my most, I feel wonderful about this particular program. But we have real soapboxes, and we put gender diverse people, scientists, on those soapboxes, and they talk to the public. They talk about their science. They tell people about their passions for their science. And we bring science to the public. They share the science, and I'm not getting off my soapbox. Sorry. So finally, just to the young people in the room, in the audience, you have a champion in me. I will sponsor you. I will maybe mentor you. I'm not a great mentor, but I'll certainly champion you. And my DMs are always open as long as Elon, you have a voice. You have, and you deserve to use that voice. And you have a reasonable expectation. It is reasonable to expect that other people will shut up and listen to you, that other people will make space for you. So be bold, use your voice. And with one more very deep gratitude and thanks, I will now shut up.
I think you're convinced that the selection committee did a very good job this year. Yes. Congratulations to all the award winners. Merci et bravo à tous les lauréats. C'est ici que se termine la cérémonie pour